Morning all. All right, so news of the day video for all you fine people for your Saturday, October the 29th, getting closer to Halloween. So injury news out of Philadelphia. So Sean Couturier, who's been fighting with back problems for a while, has had to have surgery, and he's going to be out for 3 to 4 months. So this is not great news for Philadelphia, but at least there's some kind of a timeline there. JVR is out 6 weeks. He had to have surgery on his injured finger. So for the Philadelphia Flyers, that's two top six forwards that are out. And as I said, they're off to a surprisingly good start. So we'll see if they can continue that. So last night in Arizona and Mullet Arena, it feels like that was a success. Even though they lose the game in overtime, it feels like it was a success for fans locally. Looked good on TV. It sounded fine. One of the first thoughts I had was, in a smaller rink like that, it might be easier to keep the ice in really good shape when it's hot out. Those larger arenas, I can imagine keeping them cooler is a lot more difficult. Just makes sense. So yeah, for Arizona, I think this is a win. Again, as long as this is just a temporary solution, I think they'll be fine. The decision's been made, so people can complain however they'd like and whenever they'd like, but the reality is that the NHL and the Coyotes are committed to this for, it's what, 3 years? So yeah, and then they should have the new building in Tempe. Devan Dubnyk has announced his retirement today. He hasn't played in the NHL for a while, but he has finally announced his retirement. He played over 500 games in the NHL as a goaltender. Remarkable career he had, and I will do a career video on Devan Dubnyk as well, because he did have an interesting career, because his career was left for kind of, well, it was done, and then it wasn't, and then he came back, and he ended up being pretty good for Minnesota, thus the Minnesota Wild jersey for this video. Pierre LeBrun is reporting that the San Jose Sharks are open for business, that Mike Grier's made it clear that they will take calls on any player not named Tomas Hertl. They're very much sold on Tomas Hertl. I'm kind of surprised that Couture wouldn't be considered off limits. A little bit surprised as well that both goalies would be considered to be, available. They just re-signed Kakinen, and I figured, he might be on the untouchable, but no. It would, and that doesn't mean that we're going to see a lot of trades with San Jose. It just means that they're going to take calls. It does not necessarily follow up then that there's going to be a lot of trades going on. But with a 3-7 start, yeah, things are kind of freed up for Mike Grier to make changes, and we'll see how that goes for San Jose. It's still early enough to salvage the season, and I'll discuss that in a moment here. The New York Rangers, Gerard Gallant, Molly Walker reporting that Gerard Gallant has said there will be lineup changes today in the matinee game against Dallas. That game gets started in about a bit over 90 minutes from now. Shesterkin will be starting, so we get Igor versus Jake. That should be a fantastic matchup in net. Might mean a lower scoring game. We'll see. Sometimes it doesn't when you get the big name goaltenders in there. But yeah, so that should be a fun one. Speaking of goaltenders, the Columbus Blue Jackets have officially activated Korpisalo, as was expected, and he will be starting tonight in the American Hockey League. They have also placed Blankenberg on the injured reserve, but what's really being talked about right now by Columbus fans is Elvis being kind of ticked off last night. So they allowed a shorthanded goal against Boston, and his answer was, how does that happen? We had 5 players, they had 4. Somebody tell me what's going on here. And there are some Columbus fans that have pointed out Elvis's numbers have not been good. And they haven't been. And Elvis, I think, is part of what's been going on in Columbus, what's gone wrong. I don't think it's necessarily all on him. The blue line in front of him hasn't been great either. But yeah, it's being seen as him kind of throwing his teammates under the bus rather than accepting his part in it. I don't know that that means he's not accepting his part in it. I'm sure that he would say that he needs to get better. I could kind of understand his frustration. At the same time, that's where goaltenders need to make saves, and we're in a league now. I really think what's happened with power plays is that there's this obsession with, you got to get 4 forwards. Okay, now we got to have 5 forwards to go forwards. That's great, but once the puck is turned over, you don't have a defenseman on the ice. You don't have somebody who knows the defensive coverage as well as the defensemen do, and I think it makes you much more prone to giving up a shorthanded goal. I really think that's a big part of it. I know when teams started going with 4 forwards and a defenseman, the first thing I thought was, we're going to see more shorthanded goals. We might see more power play goals, but we'll see more shorthanded. And so I think that's part and parcel of what we're seeing here. Now, Columbus is in a unique spot as well, and it's not a spot they're happy about. Looking at the overall standings in the NHL, there are 10 teams in the bottom 10, because that's how math works, but only one of them is from the East, and that's Columbus. 9 of the bottom 10 teams in the overall standings are from the West. Now, St. Louis has played fewer games, so they've got 6 points in 6 games, but they're in the bottom 10. And this is why I said with San Jose it's early. This is why the Canucks, I don't think, have anything to panic about. I was looking this morning. They're 2 points outside of a playoff spot. So the West in general has had a slow start. And what's interesting is that the East has been beating the West pretty handedly in head-to-head matchups for the most part. Now that should even out as the year goes along, but it is interesting to see so many teams in the West that have gotten off to slow starts. Minnesota, Nashville, Vancouver, just 3 just off the top of my head who we'd expected more from. LA is off to a bit of a slow start, comparatively speaking, with what was expected of them. So, yeah, the West, it feels like, is really wide open right now. That's going to change over the next few months, of course. I do expect at least a couple of the teams that are in that bottom 10. LA, St. Louis stand out as 2. Minnesota's another that won't be in that bottom 10 for long. And maybe Vancouver as well with the back-to-back wins. Maybe they've got it together and maybe they'll be able to keep this going. There's always the possibility they don't. It is Vancouver. They can find a way not to, but hey, we'll see what happens. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.